Hello and welcome to another episode of Death by Bunjie. This is getting to be a lot of fun. I really am enjoying these, and I hope you are enjoying this series of videos as well. This series of videos that are helping me decide on a successor to Bunjie. Now, what does that mean? It just means what crossbow is going to accompany me into the woods in 2021 for the 2021 hunting seasons. I'm just looking at them on my phone. I'm looking at them on the computer, trying to decide what crossbow is most suitable for me, most suitable for my hunting method. The Death by Bunjie crossbow method. That's what I'm trying to find. The crossbow, the perfect crossbow that will complement my hunting style. I've talked about these before. The Ravens, that's the subject of this video. Probably already knew that from the title. This one, I'm going to be looking at Ravens here, but we're not going to be looking at the R500E, okay? We're not going to be looking at that flagship crossbow. Instead, we're going to look at the other Ravin offerings, the other crossbows that Ravin offers. So we'll start by going to ravencrossbows.com. Looks like, ravencrossbows.com. Now that's a very good website address. I really appreciate that. I think it's awesome. And the first thing we see here is the 500E, the R500E. Now the E just stands for electronic cocking. I think it stands for the E model has the electronic cocking device included with the price, okay, included with the bow. That is the electric drive system that we see referenced on that main page. There's a couple things I don't like right off the bat, and I've mentioned this before. I don't appreciate Raven's slogan, their you meet your next rifle type of thing, and then they refer to the arrows as bullets. This is creating the wrong impression in people's minds, I think, about what this is. I don't care if it shoots 500 feet per second, it's still archery equipment. We've got people in the slower end of archery trying to say that this is too much like a rifle. And then we got the rifle folks who might get the wrong impression as well. The fact of the matter is 500 feet per second and 300 feet per second doesn't make that much difference in terms of what we're trying to accomplish. In the end, we're trying to cut through an animal, slice through an animal, and let that animal die by blood loss. We're not turning this into concussive force that you might get from a rifle. Plain and simple. We're still in the archery business here, okay? Whether Ravin wants to admit that or not. A good rifle can consistently punch holes in 3-inch bullseyes at 100 yards. A great crossbow can too. With the advent of Raven's helicoil technology, arrows are now matching bullets with lethal downrange accuracy. Okay, now if you want to qualify that and say I'm talking about rifle accuracy and crossbow accuracy and finally they are similar, great. I get that we're talking about accuracy. Now you're talking my language, right? Now you're talking my language. I like to talk about accuracy. Accuracy is number one with crossbows. I mentioned that in my book, The Death by Bunjie Crossbow Story, Confessions of a Crossbow Hunter. In my book, one of the first big lessons I learned about crossbows, thanks in part to my buddy Scott, is the fact that accuracy is number one with crossbows. But I understand what they're saying here. Right out of the box, you zero in the scope, shooters can consistently achieve 3-inch groups at the length of a football field, all with the most compact crossbow ever created. And by compact, they're talking about something here that they mean what they're talking about in comparison to me and my crossbow hunting roots with Bunjie, 36 inches wide, what I referred to jokingly in my last video as the largest crossbow known to man, or something like that. That's a really big crossbow, right? This, when we look at these, you're going to see they're much different. All that performance comes from a crossbow that measures only 6 inches from axle to axle when fully drawn. Now, they're talking about the 500E. The 500E, like I said, I did other videos on. That is their flagship now, and that crossbow, $3,000 plus, depending on whether you get it with what gear and whether you want the cocking system installed, which I would, because an electronic cocking system is awesome. That'd be really cool. And a lot of people have complained about that, saying, well, how long does the battery last? Does it work in cold weather? That sort of thing. Doesn't concern me too much, because I got to tell you, when I go out and hunt, all my batteries are recharged for cameras anyway. I'm always charging cameras the minute I get back to my house. I charge my Tacticams. I charge the DSLR. So that is just something that I'm always on top of. Let's look at what they got, though, that is not this crossbow, because I can tell you right now, a lot of people have joked, oh, that's your next crossbow. Rich, just go out and buy it. We're tired of hearing you talk about the crossbows. I'm not going to buy the 500, okay? I'm not going to start and enter the world of Ravin with their flagship 500 that just came out this year. That one, as enticing as it is, as important as I think it is for moving crossbow hunting forward, that's just not the crossbow for me. When I talk about the Death by Bunjie crossbow method, I've got some tried and true and tested tactics that I use, and that crossbow doesn't really fit in with those. It's not tried, true, and tested, is it? It's brand new. Now, I'm not necessarily opposed to it, but when we jump up to 500 feet per second, that is a new threshold that I don't want to jump into all at once. I don't want to just start out with a 500 feet per second crossbow the first year that it is available. That's me. I encourage anyone interested in putting their money on that crossbow to do so and let me know how they make out. Because down the road, maybe that's the crossbow for me. Right now, I want to look at these other models. Now, we look at their webpage, when you look at what they've got that they offer here, the Ravin R18. This is an intriguing, interesting crossbow. It's interesting to me, the R18. I think this thing is only 18 inches long. It is a tiny crossbow. It almost qualifies as a pistol crossbow in all actuality. A few things, we can look at this real quick, but this will not be my choice. But I will go through and talk about a couple of things that are interesting about this crossbow. The limb design, when we look at what we've got here, we have something that's almost akin to that lance head design. All of a sudden, the crossbow is now extremely narrow. If we look down here, 330 feet per second. Its length is 18 inches without the stock, up to 25 inches with the stock. That 25 inches might make it legal in some places, in the places where I thought it wouldn't be. 18 inches, I guarantee you, not legal everywhere. But 25 inches, now we're talking a length that probably is going to make it legal, right at the bare minimum, perhaps, in those states where it would otherwise be a problem. The height is 1.3 inches, height inch cocked, and uncocked is 4.1. The overall width is 4.75 inches. We are losing the definition of crossbow when we get something that's only 4 inches wide. It just seems odd to me, especially from a guy coming from a more traditional looking crossbow, the recurve style crossbow. But the limbs run parallel to the body. Interesting. It does not, the stirrup, Raven's not big on stirrups. I'm looking to rope cock if at all possible. I accept the fact that in 2021, to get speeds that I'm looking for, 400 feet per second or so, I think that's a modern speed that I can feel comfortable with. So I'm looking really to get close to 400 feet per second or more. I really want to get something that complements my hunting style. In other words, something that's consistent with what I already do, but just does it a little bit faster, does it with a little bit more power, allows me to do exactly what I do now, but a little bit farther down range. Just a little bit. I'm not talking about 100-yard shots. I don't want to do 100-yard shots, but I'd like to be able to think about 40-yard shots consistently. I don't think that's too much to ask in 2021, maybe even 50-yard shots. These are the kinds of things I'll be talking about more. I'm not saying that's what I'm doing, saying that's what I want to be on the table, up for discussion, for consideration, okay? Things that I want to be able to think about and talk to you about. This crossbow, at that speed, not going to do it 330 feet per second. We're really not much faster than what I already have. Another thing, though, that does not complement my style is the lack of a stirrup here and the lack of protection on the front end. If we look at that crossbow on the front end, okay, let's see if I can blow that up. But if we look at that, there, the end of the arrow, the field point and whatnot sticks out past the end of the crossbow. It is unprotected if I am going to sit in a blind, as I've demonstrated before and talked about this. I want to be able to sit in my blind with my crossbow leaning on the stirrup or on the front end of the crossbow and have the arrow protected so that I can lift it up and shoot at a moment's notice if I choose to do so. I do not typically hunt with a field pod or a tripod or anything like that in my blind. I don't carry extra equipment if I don't have to. And I've had no problem whatsoever shooting off of my knee out of a blind. I've done it dozens of times, or more than a dozen times at least. My daughter has successfully killed her first buck in Pennsylvania last year, her first buck ever, her first deer ever, with a crossbow, a buck in Pennsylvania. On the opening day of the Pennsylvania crossbow season, she was able to lift that up, set it on her knee, and shoot that deer within seconds of him entering our field of view. What more can you ask for, right? That, when you have something that works for you, and I'm not saying that's what you got to do, but I am saying that when you have something like that that works for you, why would I change it? Why would I choose something else like this crossbow where I can't do that. So this crossbow is not on the list for me, but people have asked me to look at this crossbow and comment on it. I got to tell you, again, we're pushing the boundaries of what crossbows can do, what they can look like, how they can perform, and that's a good thing. I like seeing this kind of technology. Look how narrow that crossbow is. If moving the limbs in works for this model, perhaps down the road, it will work for other models. Other companies, other manufacturers, or this manufacturer may incorporate that into their own designs down the road to the extent they're legally able to do so. And we might have some really interesting crossbows come out of this. The quiver put on there, that's great, sticks out a little bit. We've gotten to the point in the development of crossbows where the quiver now makes the crossbow wider. It used to be that you can put the quiver anywhere, and those giant limbs out front are going to, you're not going to make it any wider because those giant limbs out front. Now with these crossbows, we're seeing that the quiver is actually kind of getting in the way. A lot of you guys say you don't hunt with a quiver on. I get that. I leave it on sometimes and hunt. Sometimes I do not use it on the crossbow. There's a series of models from Ravin that are up for consideration here, however. Now, if we look at this, the 500s, again, I'm not going to purchase the 500, and I've done enough other videos on those, so I won't talk about those here, but I am not looking at that. We see a range of crossbows, $2,624.99 for their R29X crossbow. That is a crossbow that looks like a Ravin. We see the 29X sniper package, blah, blah, blah. We also have, that's the 29X, yep. We also have the 26, the R20, and the R10. Something I see here that's interesting right off the bat. Look at how all of these are out of stock. Wow. Now, we got the new one, the R500, they have that in stock. But the 29X sniper package, the R29, out of stock. The R20 is out of stock. The R10 is out of stock. The only one right now available is the R26. That's interesting, and it brings up a topic of discussion that I've had with other folks here recently, that when you're looking at these crossbows, pay close attention to what's in stock and what's not. There are a lot of crossbow hunters out there right now who can't get the proper arrow from the manufacturer, at least, that suits their crossbow, the arrow that they're looking for. They can't get them. Well, that kind of stinks. If you are a crossbow hunter and you can't get arrows, that's no good. I need to be able to make a phone call, get on my phone, whatever, and have arrows delivered within the week, right? That's what I do. There are times when I run short or I want to try different arrows or what have you, and I order arrows and I get arrows. I'm not going hunting in another state without a dozen arrows on hand that I know shoot up to my standards. Here we're seeing crossbows themselves out. I think when we go through here, I bet you're going to see similar problems with the arrows because I've heard people complain about the access to those arrows. A lot of people have questioned what the cause of that is and why these things aren't available, but I can tell you, I suspect it is largely because of COVID. It is largely COVID related. They haven't been able to open their plants to manufacture things. Trucking companies haven't been able to open up their trucks and move their trucks and drive across borders and transfer goods and all that good stuff. That COVID stuff has rippled across the entire economy, and this is just evidence of that. They had some stockpiled and they sold all those, and now we got to get caught up, and it's going to take a while to get caught up. So not too surprising, at least in my book. Now, given that these ones, let's look at this R26. We will look at this bad boy. And I'll go through it and tell you what I think here. And this is the part of the video most of you guys are waiting for. It's like, well, about time he gets to looking at the crossbow that he might actually buy. This is one that is up for discussion. Let's look at the specs first. 400 feet per second. Didn't I say that's kind of what I'm looking for? 400 feet per second sounds good to me. 6.5 pounds. That is light. I can't believe how light that is compared to my 9-pounder that I've been hunting with. So that's interesting. The length is 26 inches. Seems a little short to me. Mine is 32, 33, something like that long, I believe. The width axle to axle is 5.75 inches cocked. Cocked, this thing is under 6 inches wide. I don't care if it's 10 inches wide uncocked. That is narrow enough for me. Okay, I've been hunting with a 36-inch wide crossbow, uncocked, for over a decade. So this is not too wide for me. Not going to be a problem. Not going to be a problem whatsoever. It is 9.25 inches uncocked. That's, like I just said, that's perfect. The draw effort, 12 pounds. The draw weight, 340 pounds. Holy cow, that's a lot. You are not going to cock this with a rope, but from what I have seen, the Ravens are not really designed for the cocking with the rope. They have their sled that goes down here, hooks on, built-in cocking mechanism. These guys are kind of ahead of the curve when it comes to the built-in cocking systems, the crank systems. They were one of the earlier ones to require the cocking device to be added on, that you couldn't cock with a rope. Let's look at some of these pictures. That's a good looking crossbow, and it looks very typical of a Ravin crossbow. Oh, if we look at this, the side view, I'm going to see if I can blow that up a little bit and get it on my phone sideways. That's weird. That's a good sideways picture. I really like the open butt of the stock. I do. And that is because I can get my hand in through there, and it's got the grips for your fingers, everything else. On my crossbow, a more traditional style of crossbow, I can lift it up, but I got to squeeze that butt and lift it around, carry it around like that. I can't get my hand through it. Or I can grab it just below the safety and sort of carry it like that in my hands. I love the thumb hole style grips. I love the fact that I can put my hand right in there. You got that pistol style grip. That looks awesome. You can't ask for more than that. Ravin, and I had commented on this in a different one, but you'll see how the arrow can sort of goes inside the crossbow. Once this is loaded with an arrow, you don't see it here. You see the strings coming back because this appears to be cocked, but no arrow. Arrow that slides back in there would be in line with the string, of course, but it's sort of inside the crossbow. And on the 500, it's even more so. There's like a cage built around it. The foregrip is what has bothered me about the Ravens that I have shot. Now, I have shot this style Ravin, and I shot this. I love that foregrip, okay? The rounded nature of it, the way that it's got a spot for your fingers to get right on there, get a good grip with it. It is right next to the trigger. What is up with that? That is what I don't get about it. When I shot one of these crossbows, it felt like a little toy. My hands are like this. They're like right next to each other. This is how you shoot these, right? The whole thing is like right here. What happened to, this? Can't we be more like this with your hand? Or give me the option to have my hand clear out. Maybe even make this adjustable so it slides out. Limited room for the Picatinny rail. I get that. I think you can mount some stuff under this, it looks like. And maybe the balance is just fine for some people. I've shot these and they have not felt uber comfortable, let's put it that way, right? We've talked and joked in the other videos about extreme accuracy and hyper accuracy. How about extreme comfort, right? I'm not seeing that here, and that has not been my experience. Again, may fit other people, but for a guy with big long arms like mine and broad shoulders, and I'm a big guy, and this is a little tiny crossbow, it feels like. That was the feeling that I got from these models. There's a good looking picture there. The quiver, as we see here, that would not get in the way even if I were right-handed. My left hand for the foregrip would be under this quiver. That's a good location for it. I suspect we can put it on the other side if need be. And again, a lot of guys talking about how, well, I don't hunt with the quiver on. Well, I still got to carry my crossbow into the woods. And the way that I hunt, I typically have it cocked on my way into the woods. I carry it to my stand cocked and loaded and ready for action. And I'm trying to think if I've taken a shot that way. I'd have to think back. I don't know that I've taken a shot that way, but I know that I have had shot opportunities. And the fact that I do it that way is because, at least in part, because I've had those opportunities. Before I started doing that, I was kicking deer out. And I would like to at least be prepared to take a shot if need be. And it's a totally legal thing to do if you feel comfortable with it and you can judge yardages and have that stuff figured out. And I feel like I'm that point in my career of hunting with a crossbow that I can tell the yardages, at least, inside 30 yards pretty well. So that's not too bad. So I'd like to have that quiver installed, ready to go. And so I do take shots from time to time with the quiver on. Quivers can be a problem with canting, right? They can weight down the crossbow on one side and create a problem there. I've never suffered a problem from that as a general rule. My practices in the backyard are all good. And from a tree stand, lots of times I'm shooting off a rest. Plenty of times from the blind, I'm shooting off my knee. I have shot freehand before at animals successfully. But here we see something I don't like about that crossbow for that exact same reason. And that is that the arrow protrudes past the end of the crossbow. Now, if we look at this, I really do like those rubber feet that appear on there because they look like they would be quite durable. They look like if I were to sit in a blind and rest the crossbow in front of me, they will survive the relatively rough ground. They won't get all chewed up or anything like that. It would be nice, however, if they protruded past the end of the arrow. The fact that this arrow does not protrude there, that's a problem. Here's another picture of that. See how that arrow is not protected? It protrudes past the end of the crossbow. That's a little bit of a problem. For me, that's a big problem because that alters the way that I would hunt in a blind. Carrying that crossbow through the field, this will get snagged on multi-floral rows, that arrow will, as I'm walking through the field. There's less there to protect it because there's not a stirrup or other part of the crossbow protruding out there to protect that. That's just something I look for. That is something that's important to me. Maybe it's not important to you. I get that if it's not. Here's a bottom view, and they do have the finger guards, of course. Raven's real good with that stuff. And a top view here as well. I'm not sure about the Raven optics. I know their scopes have tons and tons of reticles because they're designed to be shooting out to 100 yards, something like that. So please let me know in the comments if you have experience with Raven's optics, or whether you prefer to go to a different model of scope, a different brand, a different manufacturer of scope. I would be interested in hearing from you about that. This is a nice looking crossbow. I kind of like their camo packages too, to be honest with you. So that's pretty cool. But I do want to show you one other thing about Raven and my thoughts on it. And we'll see if we can get my phone to straighten out here. And we did. If we go down here, now the R20 for $1,724.99. And this is the traditional looking Raven. When I think of Raven, this is the first style Raven that I ever shot. So this looks like a Raven to me. 430 feet per second, more than enough speed for me to get into the Raven business if I chose to do so. And here we're looking at 10.5 inches uncocked. Again, very similar dimensions. What I want to point out here, if we look at these pictures on this crossbow, what we see is, again, a very similar design limb-wise. The limbs are very similar. But look at the foregrip. The foregrip on this, a little bit different. And these were more comfortable the times that I have shot Ravens. I have had a much better, more pleasant shooting experience with these. So probably that would be better for me. I like the open buttstock where you get your hand in there and carry that thing around by the butt if you have to, by the stock. Not a problem. Pistol grip, get my hand right in there. Foregrip gives me a little bit extra room to move my front hand down a little further. That's cool. But look at the scope on this bad boy. What's the deal with that? I can guarantee you that at some point this crossbow is going to slide off a tree and it's going to fall on the scope, right? In the past, that's probably happened a couple of times, few times. Lowering it from a tree stand down to the ground, it kind of does whatever it wants once we get it to the ground, no matter how delicately we move that rope the last 3 or 4 feet, it is still going to swing around, and it probably wants to lay down on top of the scope because that's the heavy part of it, right, when it's coming out of a tree. This design does not look good to me. I don't like the looks of that one bit. But if you see that, I think that it is a matter of time before that thing gets worked around enough to where it's starting to challenge your accuracy. And I don't like that design. I look forward to hearing from anybody out there who has experience with these crossbows. Here is the other thing about Raven. Now this comes with 6 Raven .003 arrows and field tips, 400 grain total. This is a discussion I've had with people. And recently had this discussion with my buddy Scott, and I want to express it the best I can. Raven tells you got to use their arrows, okay? That makes sense to me because this is precision equipment, and they don't want to hear from you if you went out and cobbled together your own arrows and you screwed up your crossbow. They don't want to hear about it, right? So they require you to use their arrows. That's my understanding. If I am wrong, absolutely correct me in the comments. That makes sense to me because this is precision equipment and because they can't control what you might be doing out there with your own arrows, right? They've designed it to work a certain way with certain equipment. And if you deviate from that, you do it at your own risk, not theirs. So warranty-wise, you got to respect that from Raven. So the fact that I'm required to use Raven arrows does not bother me in the least. I would happily do that if I can get my hands on these said arrows. So the Raven .001 premium arrows are out of stock. The .003 arrows are out of stock. The premium match grade lighted nocks are out of stock. and the .003 lighted arrow, they're all out of stock. So you can't get their arrows. This is the off season. Again, by the time the season rolls around, hopefully they are caught up and they have this remedied and they've caught up with their manufacturing. This is, they got a cool arrow case you can buy. That's pretty cool. Let's look at these lighted ones. Luminox. Okay, cool. They are Luminox, which is my preferred lighted knock. They're not a knockoff. Get it? Knockoff. Yeah. Okay. So they're the real deal, the Luminox. So that's pretty cool. But they are out of stock. So, and I love the Ravin cases. Those Ravin cases. That's pretty cool. They're like coffins or something. 400 feet per second, 400 grain total arrows. I probably would be purchasing the .001 arrows to go with this as opposed to the .003 if that were possible. I would like to have the .001 straightness. Although Ravin seems content that a .003 will work with this. That's fine. I've just had personally better experience with a greater degree of straightness, the .001s, and that's what I'm aiming. That was a pun. That was unintentional. That one was unintentional. But I'm aiming to get the .001s most likely with whatever crossbow I choose. 400 feet per second, 400 grains. Boy, if I can't remember that one, we got problems. So even my 50-year-old brain will remember this one. We're going to go back here to a Realtree Arrow Momentum Calculator. Kaboom. We'll click on that. Let's see what we got here. We got, what was those numbers again? Just kidding. 400. Oh, I don't need that. Okay. Put your email, all we want your email address. You've already got my email address. You don't need to keep asking. Last time I did this, it didn't give me a graphic. But what we're looking for here is to find out whether this fine crossbow, the Ravin R26, 29, 20? The Ravin R26. Does it moose out of the box? Can we get that highly revered moose icon out of the box? Generate kinetic energy and momentum. Ooh, I can't wait. It's going to moose. It's going to moose. Kaboom, it mooses. Look at that. The antlers are so big on this moose that it sticks up above the keyboard on my phone. So our setup, out of the box, this crossbow generates 142 foot-pounds of kinetic energy and 0.71 slugs. Wow. Wow, that's awesome. It's not surprising. Here is my final thoughts on Ravin, okay? Ravin, they're the pioneers. They're the pioneers of a new genre of crossbows, a new wing of crossbow designs. And what I mean by that is, it's that, that style that says Ravin, right? There's another company out there doing that, but that's because they own Ravin. Okay? And that's fine. I mean, that's fine. Is this crossbow still on the list of potentials for Death by Bunjie? Yes, it is. That crossbow is one that I will add to the list of ones to go shoot. I can't tell you if I'm going to buy that Ravin or not, but I can tell you that's probably on the list of ones to try. Well, that's all that I have for you on this episode of Death by Bunjie. I'm going to go have dinner with my family. Until the next time, all hail Bunjie. I do not want the front camera. Boom. Now we're recording. Start now. 3, 2, 1, 0. We are now recording. We'll drop that down here. All right. Hello and welcome to another episode of Death by Bunjie.